Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, August 19th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, of the many things that I find interesting during Ohio State's training camp so far, it seems like the starting lineup is pretty much set. I mean, there's still some battles going on here and there, you could say, at one of the corner spots, maybe one of the safety spots, although it looks like Damon Webb's going to be a starter over Eric Smith as Eric Smith comes back from that knee injury. He's been medically cleared, but still knocking off the rust. You know, and you have at that corner spot with Marshawn Lattimore and Denzel Ward. But really, I think the starting jobs are pretty much set at this point, which is rare. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think this is exactly what Urban and company wanted to have happen. Remember at the start of the camp, everybody was talking about they got to get the job sort of figured out in the first week so then they can start this team really getting ready for the year. Well, that's where we're at now. And I'm actually really okay with that. Let's talk about those two positions you just brought up. First of all, the corner position between Lattimore and Ward. The good news is that this seems like it's a position battle where it's actually which one is better, not just find somebody who's competent. And that's a really good sign because there's been position battles in the past where we're just like, oh my God, get a body on the field. He's not going to burn us every play. In this case, it seems like Ward and Lattimore are both excelling to a point where they're saying, yeah, both of these guys can play. That's what you're looking for OSU. As for Damon Webb being ahead of Eric Smith, I think that's absolutely the best case scenario. Nothing against Eric Smith, who looked like a darn good player before he was injured, but he's coming off a pretty major injury. And to be real honest, if the guy's coming off of a pretty major injury, athletically, he's probably not up to par with a lot of these guys that OSU has on the field. And a guy like Webb, who has some experience playing, I think is taken naturally to the safety position. So that's a good sign. But in the end, you know, we got 2 weeks till games begin now. The Buckeyes, I mean, literally tomorrow is 2 weeks until Bowling Green. So Urban needed this stuff set. He needed his lineups in place. Urban needed all of that to be set fairly quickly so they could start getting themselves really ready to play games. And the fact that it looks like we're getting there is a very good sign. I think we're still going to have some questions that aren't going to be answered till the game start, which is mostly on the offensive side of the ball. How do you use Curtis Samuel? Who's the receivers going to be more often than not? But up to this point in camp, I'm really happy with the progress we've seen of the guys who are going to play.
Another very interesting takeaway from camp is I know they're putting a huge focus on passing the ball more. They were so run-heavy last year, Bax, and you know, I think even when they tried to pass, they just weren't good at it, and they would revert back to, well, screw it, let's just run the ball. So they're really making a concerted effort to pass the ball a lot more in practice this year, and I'm sure they're going to pass the ball a lot against Bowling Green and Tulsa. My question for you, sir, are you buying that games like Oklahoma, games like at Michigan State, name it, big games this year, that team up north coming to the Horseshoe, are they going to be able to pass the ball a lot in those games, or do you think they're just going to go revert back to running the ball a lot?
Oh, I think they're going to do whatever works, to be real blunt, but I have no reason to disbelieve that the passing game won't play a major role. The answer I have to that is look back at Michigan State in 2014, where JT threw the ball all over the field, and Ohio State knocked off the Spartans en route to a Big Ten championship and a national championship. I think last year the passing game was completely discombobulated because the quarterbacks really never got themselves in a position where they were able to, you know, get the practice time needed to get in sync with the receivers. I think the offense was kind of poorly called last year until the final couple games. The way you look at this right now is that J.T. Barrett has as much experience as any quarterback Urban has ever had at Ohio State. J.T. Barrett is the most accurate passer Urban has ever had at Ohio State. And think about this. Last year's offense dropped back in scoring pretty far from 2014 because it was so predictable. And look, last year it was easy to go, just give it to Zeke because Zeke's awesome, which it worked out fine for the most part. But if you want a dynamic Ohio State offense, look back to the second half of 2014 before JT broke his leg. And you see an offense that teams had to play semi-straight up, and that made the running game flat out dangerous. I think you're going to see a lot of times this year where teams are going to crash down to defend against the run, and you're going to see receivers running fairly open in the field. So I'm buying it. Now, don't tell me they're going to throw to the tight ends. That's maybe too much for me. I still have to see that to believe it because this is Ohio State, and we never throw to our tight ends enough. But I do believe there's going to be a passing game this year because we've seen JT do it before and because he is the unadulterated, clear-cut number one starter.
That's a great point about the Michigan State game in 2014. I mean, you know, you pop on the film there, and J.T. Barrett showed that he was a complete quarterback. You know, we knew he was calm. We knew he could run the ball well. We knew he was a good leader. I think that's the day he showed, or the night he showed, you know, he can not only pass the ball well, but he can tear up one of the best defenses in the country. Sticking with the passing game, I think we know who the starting wide receivers are, Noah Brown and Corey Smith. Who are going to be the backup wide receivers, the top two? You can even go top four if you want. Who are going to be the top backup wide receivers backs?
Well, I'm going to want to say Torrance Gibson because I've been super high on him since the day they signed him. I don't know that he's going to be consistently on there, but I think his size and ability to go up and get a ball at the high point is going to make him a red zone threat down near the goal line. So I think you're going to see him play a fair amount. I again, can't buy into the Dontre Wilson hype. I know he's playing the H, and, he's going to be out there getting the opportunity to play, but, I have to see Dontre actually produce after 3 years of not seeing much. So I'm a little skeptical. I'd love for Johnny Dixon's hype to actually end up panning out. We've talked so much about his knees and whether he's going to be able to keep playing. So if he ended up actually getting on the field this year, that would be really, really great to see. Obviously you have to include Curtis Samuel in the passing game as well. And, I just mentioned 6 guys right there. And we haven't even gotten down the chart about, Urban loves Terry McLaurin. He talks about him all the time. James Clark apparently keeps doing well. You have a lot of options right now. So to me, wide receiver is really the position that we're not going to have pan out until we've had a couple weeks worth of games to see how these guys show up when the Bullets are live.
Last thing before I let you go, what's the biggest concern defensively? Just anything that comes to mind that you're concerned about regarding the Silver Bullets?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the inexperience on this defense comes together in a live setting. Because athletically, is anybody worried about any of these positions? God, no. This is Ohio State. The recruits that these guys are all in the field are these massively talented guys that everybody in the country wanted. So athletically, this is going to be as fast of a defense as we've ever had. I think the big question is going to be read and react for guys like Dante Booker, guys like Worley and Jerome Baker, who haven't really been on the field a lot. These guys can show it in practice, but, we've seen in the past there were some super athletic linebackers at Ohio State who thought about the play for that split second, and then it ended up missing a tackle because they couldn't get there in time. They didn't read and react to the play quick enough. And so if they show that they're able to just be linebackers and just go and read and react really well, that's wonderful. But I think we definitely need to see how Dante Booker and Worley and Baker and them all do in a live setting, because right now the only guarantee we have at linebacker is McMillan. So if I had one concern, it would be the linebackers, and honestly the linebacker concern is still fairly minimal. Most of my concerns going into the season are on offense, and I think that once you clear up the receiver position and once the offensive line continues to stay healthy, then that clears up too. So I think let's keep an eye on the young linebackers in the first couple games, hope nobody gets burned badly in some sort of pass coverage, and go from there. Because let's not forget here, Darren Lee is a giant replacement that has to be made. And, obviously Raekwon's great, but Darren Lee was the playmaker on defense last year. And somebody has to step into those shoes. So let's go with replacing Darren Lee. That's my number one concern.
Excellent insights, as always, out of the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. You can catch his column every Sunday on Bucknuts, The Bucket. So make sure you read that must-read column if you are a Bucknuts subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, try our buy 1 month, get 1 month free deal. Thanks again to Matt Baxendell, and thank you to the listeners for tuning into the show. Hope everyone has a great day and a great weekend. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.